Hey friends, welcome back for another Brutus Monroe video. This is Cassie. Today I'm going to be showcasing the STAMPtember stamp set, which is a collaboration between Simon Says Stamp and Brutus Monroe. And our stamp set today is called Bounty of Wreaths, and it's only available until it's gone, so you may want to hop on that one pretty quickly. So let's go ahead and take a closer look at the stamp set. Again, this stamp set is called Bounty of Wreaths, and it is a fantastic stamp set. Take a look at that. It's got 3 wreaths in there. You can hit all your fall cards, you can hit all of your Halloween cards, and as well as your Christmas cards. And we also have a matching die that cuts those wreaths out, not only around the wreath, but on the inside of the wreath as well. So this is a must-have. And so there it is. We are going to make a Christmas card today. But I'll show you a couple other cards that I made with it. Here's my stamped out image. I used some Raven Detail ink to stamp this out onto some alcohol marker cardstock, and this just means that it's good for alcohol marker coloring. And so I'm going to use my Copic colors, and we're going to start off with the R35. I'm going to do my best to try and get all the colors up on the screen for you in case this is something that you want to replicate later on. You'll notice that these stamps are incredibly detailed, which makes the coloring process pretty easy in the sense that you don't have to do a lot of work. You can just put down a little bit of color, maybe add just a little bit of shading if you want to, but the detail really does all of the work for you. So you'll notice that I'm kind of just slapping down a little bit of color, especially here on the candy cane. And again, because there's so much detail on these stamps, it just, you don't have to do a lot. But I am going to bring in a second color after I get all of the bows colored in. I figured my plan was to do the biggest items first and then work my way back into the small stuff. But while I had the reds out, I would do the candy canes and the bows. And so our first color is R35. Our second color is R29. And all I'm going to be doing is a little bit of feathering where I think that the shadowing might be. I really don't have a lot of rhyme or reason. I never really do. People ask all the time, and I don't. I just put down color. So there's our big bow. We'll come in, and where I think there's going to be some shadowing, I'll put in my color. And you wouldn't even have to, if you wanted to keep it fairly harsh, you wouldn't have to blend it out. But that's all I'm doing is I'll put down a little bit of color with that R29 and then come back in with the R35 and blend that color out. I don't do it on the candy canes because that's a very, very small area. And I have noticed that with my reds, they have a tendency to bleed outside of the lines a little bit. So I try to be a little bit careful when I'm putting down that color. I don't know why, but they just bleed so quickly. And beautiful, but they bleed. All right, now we're going to move on to the bells. I'm going to use the color Y26. This is actually mustard. There is what they call a gold color, and I think it's Y28. But I decided to do the Y26 because I thought it would also match really well with my second color, which is YR27. I know those are extremely different, but I thought that that almost bronzy color of orange would work really well once I blended it out on those bells. And so that's what I'm going to do. I put down my first color, and then I'll take the Y26 in again and kind of blend that color out. It takes a second, but then it softens itself up. The pine cones, I'm going to be using E59 as my first color. And again, super detailed image. So this could be intimidating if you didn't look at it from the perspective of, well, all the work is done for you on the image. So all I'm going to do when I come in with my second color is I'm just going to put in a little bit of dark shadowing. No, I'm not going to pay any attention to the detail on the pine cones. I'm just going to put down a little bit of color on where I think there might be some of the darker. So I'll blend that out almost like it's a rounded image, as you can tell. And then I'm not even going to blend it out with my E59. Then for the baubles, I wanted those to actually be white. So I'm going to come in with some C3, and then I'm going to blend that out with a little bit of C1 after I'm done with the C3. So that'll just soften that C3 a little bit. Our wreath itself is going to be the color G16, and there's only enough of that showing that honestly, me bringing in my second color almost wasn't necessary, but I will bring in a second color. So I'm just making sure that my wreath is all completely covered, but it's neat. Now it's starting to really take form. It's so pretty. I love the detail on this stamp. I can see myself stamping out a bunch of these and coloring them up as I'm watching a show or something, or maybe listening to some music or whatever the case may be. And you could really crank out a bunch of Christmas cards. So then, like I said, I'll bring in that second color, which is almost unnecessary, but it adds a little something. And then for my berries, those are going to be B37. So there aren't a lot of berries, but it's a little pop of blue. And then for our star, we have Y06, and then I'm going to bring in the color Y08 as my darker shade. And then that's going to end up finishing all of our coloring. So once that's done, I'll bring in the matching die, and then I'm going to tack that down with just a little bit of purple tape. Super easy to line it up too, and then we'll be ready. I went ahead and took one piece of cardstock that measured 8.5 by 11 inches. I cut off 7 inches of that, and that made our card base. And this is the embossing powder that we're going to use. The leftover piece of that cardstock was about 4 inches, so I cut that down to be 3.5 inches, so it'll fit my panel perfectly, my card base perfectly. So now we're going to do some embossing. I went ahead and put down some magic powder bag to start, and then I inked up my stamp with some embossing ink, and then I'm covering that with the Christmas Day embossing powder. This stuff is absolutely gorgeous. It's a beautiful like forest green that has little pops of red glitter in it. So it's different, and I love that. And it's not super in your face. It's very, very subtle. So I'm going to cover the entire background doing this. And so I'll just position my stamp each way, and my suggestion is don't stamp like the entire background first and then try to cover it with embossing powder. The best option is to stamp, 1 or 2 possibly, cover those with your embossing powder, heat set that, and then continue to work down your panel so that your embossing ink doesn't dry up. And then I'm just going to wipe away the excess magic powder bag. And there it is. You can see those little pops of the red glitter, and it's so pretty. I'm so happy with it. I do want to do a little stamping on the inside because that's just what I do these days. So I'm going to take some Simon Hurley Fake Plant ink, and I'm going to stamp that down. And then I'm going to take my sentiment that I want for the inside. I do love that this stamp set has several possibilities, or a couple different possibilities for each of your wreaths. So on the inside, and it's not straight, may your days be merry and bright. I only bring that up because somebody the other day said, my goodness, you always stamp so straight. And I was like, that's because you don't see all the mistakes. But just proof right there that I don't always stamp straight, which in my opinion adds to the handmade element. I went ahead and attached down my card panel to my card base using liquid glue, and then I'll stamp the other sentiment for the outside just on a scrap of white cardstock, and then I'll use my guillotine trimmer to trim down my sentiment so that I can get it to be the size that I want. And then when I have that all trimmed down, I'm actually going to cover the back of it with some Brutus Monroe foam tape, and I'm also going to cover the back of the wreath with the Brutus Monroe foam tape. This stuff is great. This is black foam tape, which is even cooler. And then I'll peel off all of the release paper with one of my just pick tools that I have. And then I'll also do that on the sentiment and throw away that release paper. And then we'll adhere down our wreath first, and then our sentiment, and which again, that's not straight either. But that's going to finish off our Christmas card. I do want to show you the other cards that I made today using this stamp set. This is a great stamp set, and like I said before, it's part of STAMPtember, so once it's gone, it is gone. They will not remake it. There's my fall one, which uses some twisted tangerine embossing powder, and then I do have an A2 Halloween card that uses some night shift embossing powder in the color purple. This stuff is so pretty. Oh. So there you have it, 3 cards using the STAMPtember stamp set. I would love to know what you think of this. I will have a link down below to get your hands on this stamp set. If you liked this video, hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already done so. And as always, I will see you very soon in another video. Bye, everybody.